The JLR interview series.
Okay, so it's Thursday afternoon, British time, just after 5 p.m. And I've got this very special interview today with two greats of contemporary jazz, and their names are Mark Egan and Danny Gottlieb. So first of all, how are you guys today?
Hey, we're doing well, thanks, Laurie.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for doing this.
That's fine. Now, these guys are in different locations in the States, so we just had a few technical issues trying to get this together, but I think we're all good to go now. So I have some questions for these guys today. They've actually brought out a new CD, which has just come out, called Electric Blue, on the Wavetone record label. And before we get into the interview, just worth saying that you would have heard these guys' music on Jazz on the Radio quite a lot over the last few years. For my personal collection, I feature Liberal Art and Blown Away, quite a few of the tracks, and I absolutely love them. And so it's really great to get these guys here to talk about their new music. So to start off, as I said, you've got a new record called Electric Blue, which came out on Wavetone Records. Yeah, is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first question is this your first collaboration for some time, or have you been working together a lot in the last few years?
This is the first duo collaboration that we've ever done, just drums and bass.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we've played, recorded a few records over 2 years ago. And we've done sessions together, but this is the first group record with Danny and I. Before that, it was a record of mine, solo record called Direction Home, and then About Now. That was right, Danny?
Yeah. And it's kind of a celebration of, we've been playing together as a rhythm section for 50 years, or just about 50 years. And one of the things we've done over the years, in addition to being rhythm sections, is we've had some fun playing some duo concerts, mostly in a setting that would be good for that, where we just play, rhythms from the drums and from the bass and textures and colors, and this was some recording kind of to feature that and to document that type of playing, and also kind of, right, Mark, to honor, the fact that we've been playing together for so long.
So, well, the first question is, did I just hear correct? Did you say 50 years? 50?
50.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realise it was that long. I mean, you guys would be. I know you played in the Pat Metheny group, and I suppose that is getting long. So you guys known each other since you were teenagers or kids or something? Is that the case then?
We actually met at the University of Miami as students.
Oh, I see.
And then we started playing together then. And that was in, Danny, when did you get there? 71?
71, yeah. That's when we first met. We both played in the concert jazz band at the school. And you were playing trumpet, but played some bass. And then you switched over to bass, and you were immediately like the best bass player around for, like 8 years. So it was incredible. But yeah, it was 71. Can you believe it?
Wow, that is incredible. And the other thing is, you said you played trumpet. Because I'm sure I've heard this quite a few times over the years, where guys who went on to play like bass or guitar actually started off playing like trumpet or saxophone. That seems to happen fairly regularly. What do you think the similarities are when you switch from one, which on the face of it is quite a different instrument?
Yes. Well, this is Mark speaking, and I was originally a trumpet player all through elementary school.
Wow.
Junior high school, playing in the high school bands, and also when I was about 15, I was professional playing with bands around Boston, where I grew up, Boston, Massachusetts. So it was just something that appealed to me. My father played trumpet in the Navy band, and so that was an instrument I went for. But when I was 15, I started hearing all the music I heard before, but the music on the radio at the time was Motown and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and Cream, and for some reason I zoned in on bass. My ears went to the bass as opposed to like the higher spectrum, like in the trumpet range. So it was just a natural thing for me, and I it was my secondary instrument. I went out and bought a bass at that time, but I was still playing trumpet. And they are different in that one is really in the high register and one's low register, but they're both melodic instruments in a way, you know, when you think about it, even though the function is very different.
Yeah, okay, so like when you started playing bass, were you already thinking in that melodic way? Because I know that the conception of the bass started to change around that time in the early 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, at that time on trumpet, I was listening to people like Miles Davis and Freddie Hubbard and all the great jazz trumpet players, and so I applied all of that knowledge over to the bass. At the same time, I realized that I had to be able to groove on the bass, so there was a whole another set of learning experiences that I had to get happening to really be solid as a bass player. So, but I did take the melodies over to it.
Yeah, okay. And, the next thing I wanted to ask on that is, you say it's a duo record. I've listened to quite a few of the tracks, and I've featured a couple of tracks on our latest releases slot. You said it's just the two of you playing, because I did get the impression there were more guys on the disc.
Yeah.
Well, we have a thing that we've been doing for a long time, where we play as a duo, but sometimes Mark has used these different effects machines which creates sort of soundscapes. And so it's sort of like the way people use repeater machines, and it wasn't used all the time, but it was something we could make fuller sound when we played live. And a lot of this experiences came from, we used to go to, when we were the Pat Metheny group, we used to go to Japan a lot, and we would change our trip on the way home and go to Hawaii. We had a really good friend of ours who lived in Kauai, and we would stay with her on the beach and play music late into the night, just the two of us, or if other friends were there. And a lot of the atmospheric kind of sounds were influenced by that time period, and we were also, again, using extra machines and sounds to create more of like a wave-like texture. So this all evolved from that type of playing. So it may sound like more than two people. And we did use overdubs just to kind of fill it out a little bit. But it's the two of us playing.
And also, from my ears, my expert ears of listening, not as a musician, but you use a lot of harmonics and things like that. So that kind of helps, doesn't it? Given that conception that there might be more than two people playing.
Exactly. There's a whole universe of sound in the bass with harmonics and the upper register, and just I try to pull out all the different aspects of sound that I can get out of the instrument. If you really investigate it, you realize that thanks to people like Jaco Pastorius and Victor Wooten and other great bass players that have come along even before. So all those sounds are in there, and we try to be creative with them. And the same with the cymbals. Danny has an amazing array of cymbals that you can mic really closely, or you can underneath the bottom, and they just sound amazing, and they create these otherworldly texture sounding, Yeah,
I mean, I just love trying to get different sounds out of those instruments, just like Mark was saying with the harmonics with the bass.
Yeah.
The cymbals, you can hit them in different spots. You can use different size sticks. You can use a wood tip or a nylon tip. You can. One of the cymbals that works very well is a cymbal that has no bell on it. It's a flat cymbal, and it's something that it's real pingy, but it's kind of a textural kind of cymbal, and I have some fun with it. We've done some experiments over the years when we play live, where I'll have two of those cymbals, two different pitches, mic'd in stereo, so that if you're listening in a stereo PA in a live situation or on headphones, it sounds like hearing stuff from one side to the other, which, it tends to sound like more than one person. In fact, sometimes I even think of it, one of the influences for me is the New Orleans music, where you have a separate snare drummer and a bass drum playing, where it sounds like, and the bass drum is going boom, 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 boom. So the same thing with the cymbals. I can use two hands to create sounds like two different people playing at the same time in stereo, kind of rhythms around it. So it tends to add a little more texture and color, and it's a lot of fun. And the way Mark and I have played for so long, it just allows for open space, and it's different every time. There's no, exact structure. We can really let the moment of improvisation carry us, which is so much fun.
All the stuff that I've heard you do over the years, and I'm just thinking of things like when you were with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, for instance, and it kind of I think back to last year. I was very fortunate to meet and interview Peter Erskine in London, which was a real pleasurable experience for me. And one of the things that I remember is that I know he's always been a big fan of Elvin Jones, and he grew up listening to his music and stuff. And I think it's the same with yourself, because I understand that you a real fan of the great former drummers. But what you and Peter have done is you've both taken that traditional sound and you've really updated it and modernized it as well. So I could hear elements of your the traditional jazz at the same time as you added all the modern elements. I mean, is that something that came naturally, or was that something you really had to work on?
No, I think both for Mark and I, as Mark was just saying, we grew up, listening to such a variety of music. When you're growing up in the 60s into the 70s, and then going to college where things are, at that time where, you just got done with Woodstock, and jazz was changing, and Miles is electric, and Mahavishnu's there, and Hendrix is playing, and I think we both, and Mark can tell, from his experiences, but I mean, I was predominantly jazz influenced, but also listening to a lot of R&B and pop music. And I was thinking one of the first albums I ever played to was a Stax, Best of Stax, Booker T and the MGs. And then, I got to play with Duck Dunn and Cropper later in life, which was really fun.
Yes.
But it's because, the whole lineage of music is something that I think that we both have studied and continue to study. Elvin is in there, all of the great jazz drummers, all the great pop drummers. It's really just a fun, long time study of growth. And I think if you grow up liking music, you just want to learn about all of it. I'm still studying. We both are still studying now.
Yeah.
Going back and listening to things, and I think the same is true with Peter Erskine. If you listen to his history, he plays light trio recordings, and then he played in Weather Report, or he played with Maynard Ferguson. And Mark has played. We both got to play with Gil Evans.
Yeah.
Played most avant-garde jazz, and also Mark was playing with David Sanborn right out of college. So, we both have had all kinds of different experiences, and I think it's just, it's like to me, when you study, say, Elvin Jones, you can't just listen to 2 recordings and him with Coltrane. You've got to go back and listen to, 50 years of his playing and see how he sounded as he was a kid.
Right.
There's a great bass player in Denmark, Bo Steep, who gave me a recording.
Yeah, Bo Steep.
And with Phineas Newborn, and he said, I'm giving you, this is an Elvin recording. The story is that Elvin forgot his drumsticks, so he played the entire recording on brushes. And I listened to it, and it's like an hour of tracks of just brushes. He never goes to sticks because he forgot them at the session.
That's amazing.
You discover stuff like that, and you add that to your palette. Okay, that's how you play with brushes for an hour. So, I'm just always learning. And Mark can tell you about his experiences, too.
Yeah. Well, I remember this is some years back. I was just checking out one of the European music channels, and it was some blues musician, and I thought, hold on, that is definitely Danny Gottlieb. So yeah, I can't remember who the musician was, but yeah, you've really played a lot of different sort of situations. It was great fun.
Yep. We've gotten, just thinking of you, being in London. Mark, you remember we played, was it Gil's 70th birthday we played at the Royal Festival?
Yeah, the Hammersmithonian, yeah.
Hammersmithonian, that's what it was. And it was, and Van Morrison came and sang Moon Dance.
Ah.
Yeah. Evans Orchestra. We had some crazy
Right, so the other thing I wanted to ask is, about your new CD, and it got me thinking that you two have got a really unique sound, which you don't hear anywhere else. And you mentioned what you were discussing just now, especially the harmonics. I was thinking of the Liberal Arts, the extended version of Liberal Arts, which sometimes I play on electronica because it's quite an electronic based track, and you use a lot of harmonics at one point in that track at the juncture. It's kind of throwback to the great days, obviously, of the 80s and 90s when this kind of fusion was really at its peak. How did you cultivate this sound? I mean, would you say was it just something that came to you, or how did you get this sound, basically? Because it's really unique sound.
Of the harmonics, or this new record, putting the record together?
Yeah, so for me, this record is like a throwback to what you guys were doing with Liberal Arts, Blown Away, and also another CD which I have, which is Living on the Crest of a Wave, Bill Evans from 1983, which I think you both played on. It's kind of like it's taking me back to that time. How did you guys get this sound? Because no one else was having that sound at that time, really.
Well, this is Mark speaking. Danny and I spent a lot of time playing together, especially very, very concentrated with the Pat Metheny group. And during the 4 years that I was with the band, Danny was with them, I think, 6 years, right, Danny?
Yeah.
But we were very aware about how we individually sounded and as we sounded as a group, and really, having band meetings every night.
Really?
After and talk about how the music was. So, it was a very, as I said, very concentrated, but in that context, we spent a lot of time working with dynamics. That was one thing about that band that was very special, where it would go from triple loud to double F, triple F to extremely soft, and we used that technique of using dynamics. And Danny and I play with a lot of dynamics, and during our whole exploration, I mean, that's not just the only part that makes it sound, but Danny's use of the way he's explored his technique and his expression through the cymbals and the drums, and my experimentation with all the fretless basses and multi-sounding basses, it's something that we've worked on and from just playing in so many circumstances. And I think with this record, Electric Blue, the duo record, we wanted to really showcase that like we've never showcased it before, and pull all those elements into it. Not to use the pun elements, because we have a group of elements.
Yeah.
And so when we did this record, we wanted to have not just display, free playing. We wanted to make it a very listenable album with a lot of some high energy in it, some medium energy, some very open, expansive soundscapes, and we just used the sensibilities that we've garnered from playing together for so long and listening to each other and playing in so many different circumstances.
This is Danny speaking. One thing, Mark, as you were talking, I was just thinking back to the Matheny days, and we would have the band meetings, but then you and I would kind of almost, not in a subversive way, but we kind of like had our own little thing and our own way of communicating, where we would treat the songs. We would talk about how we wanted to approach the rhythm section part of it. In fact, a lot of it came from you. I mean, I remember the thing that I was always that I always loved and still love about the way we play and the way you play is there's no fluff in this. You were very serious, and everything was done for a reason. It wasn't just a bunch of notes ever. It was always a react to the moment and make every note count. Kind of like the way we used to study. People used to talk about Wayne Shorter could play one note and you'd get goosebumps, and that's all you needed was the one note. So I remember sometimes drummers, no offense to us drummers, but we tend to, we want to throw a lot of extra stuff in there sometimes because, we work on technique. And I remember from the word go in the Matheny group, we both, with you kind of taking the lead as how I remember it, really kind of try to eliminate things that didn't mean anything. We did everything for a reason, but we also had a lot of fun twists and turns where we would, you could play a rhythm and I would know where you were going, so I could kind of play along with that rhythm. So we were really a team, as the two of us as one unit. That we were together from the word go. And in fact, as I'm teaching now, that's the first thing when a student says, "How do I approach this song?" I said, "What's the bass do?" Play with what the bass is. You have to make a decision. I had a student yesterday talking about playing a samba that was I think it was in 5, and he was trying to figure out how to play a double time samba, and I just said, "What's the bass do?" And follow what the bass is, and that's really kind of been my mantra for all the music I've played with you, Mark, and separately, is to just look at the rhythm section as an absolute team in every situation.
It's that's what I tell students or in master classes. Listen to the drummer.
It's working as a team, and we have a lot of fun. Mark and I. In every context, the Matheny group was what that was. And it was kind of the two of us in that band, and then we got to tour with Randy Brecker and Ileani when they were married. We did a big European tour. In fact, I remember we played in London with that group. I don't know if it was, I forget where we played, but I remember we were there doing that. And then we toured with Michael Franks together, and then you helped get into the Gil Evans Orchestra, and we played this big concert with Sting and Ferrugia in '87, which was really fun. And that was a very meaningful, I think that shaped for me a whole new, Matheny group was one thing, playing in other bands was something else, but then when I got to play with Mark in the Gil Evans Orchestra, which was this free, crazy band. Most big bands, for people that are listening, you think of a big band, okay, there's a saxophone solo and then there's a trumpet solo. Gil wouldn't orchestrate it, it wouldn't tell us anything. We'd start playing, and if you wanted a solo, you just stood up and started soloing.
Right.
And then section would go all kinds of different ways, and that was the biggest learning experience. It was the greatest. It was really a life-changing thing.
Well, that was, well, I suppose unusual, but I suppose you have to get the best musicians to be able to pull that off. Gil, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that with anyone, would he?
Exactly, and Gil in his later years, that's exactly how he chose people for the band. He chose them as colorists, as that was his way of composing, was to hire the musicians that he knew would take it in a certain direction, which is so much like the way Miles Davis chose his musicians. So it was interesting. So we felt an obligation to Gil to not just take it too far away, but because we know we had the ultimate respect for him.
Yeah. Wow. He said to play whatever you want, whenever you want, but it wasn't sort of like just a throwaway statement. It was, I'm giving you a responsibility to really, play at the highest level and really have we knew Gil was listening to every note we played, so we wanted him to like it. but we'd have some fun with that band.
I mean, and what about the audience? How did they receive it?
Oh, they were great. The lovely audiences. We played every Monday night at a club in New York called Sweet Basil in Greenwich Village, and then we did quite a bit of touring. We were on the same bill with Miles Davis and Gil Evans Orchestra,
Wow.
which was in Japan, and then in the States we played also concerts. But the people loved it. With that band, even at its worst, it was extremely creative and completely avant-garde. And at its best, it was thrilling, to the audience. People would just freak out. They love it.
Go.
I was going to say, to me, especially the Monday night at Basel in New York, the audience pretty much knew what they were going to get. So they were kind of watching, waiting to see what happened. And, like Mark was saying, even at its worst, it would still be creative, but at its best, thrilling. And it's something I just remember we would all try to live our lives to get back for that Monday night, because you just didn't know what it was going to be, and it could be some of the greatest musical moments that you ever had out of nowhere, so it was really something.
Sure. I mean, for like the people listening, I mean, are there any names who played during that time that we might be familiar with, who played in that group or configuration?
Oh, sure, several. Well, George Adams, the great saxophone.
Oh, George Adams, yeah.
David Theobald played from time to time. Tom Malone, the great Lou Soloff, trumpet player.
Yeah, Lou Soloff, yeah.
Hiram Bullock.
Oh, yeah, Hiram Bullock.
Pete Levin, the great genius.
Gil Goldstein?
Gil Goldstein played in it. Chris Hunter from England.
Yeah.
Killed it. Yeah.
Wow.
Dave Bargeron, a great trombone player. Miles Evans played trumpet. Gil's son.
Yeah.
Well, Danny was in there.
Sometimes the subs would be fun. Alan Rubin would sub sometimes, of course, from the Blues Brothers, and top studio musician in New York would be there. Shunzo Ono, great trumpet player, he was in the band. Who else? John Clark, one of the most amazing jazz horn players ever, was in it.
Sometimes Jaco Pastorius would come in, and there'd be two bass players, me and myself.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds incredible.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. Really great.
And just every gig was different. Every gig was different.
mentioned Jacko there. Am I right that you took some lessons from Jacko early on in your career? Or am I making that up?
Yes, in the early 70s, when Jocko was in Florida and I was still in Miami, he taught at his summer camp classes, and I took lessons for the summer with him, which was great. But at the same time, we also played in the same band, a band called Baker's Dozen, which was in Miami. So I knew him from playing in a band with him, but then I took some formal lessons with him, which were incredible. He was an amazing musician and really a great teacher.
Yeah, there was a documentary many years ago on the BBC over here, and one of his guys who he grew up with, and he made an interesting observation. He said that what Jacko did was he took the horn lines of James Brown and applied it to the bass, because at the time the bass was all about rhythm. So he added something completely different. So that's quite amazing.
Yes, it is. And then he also incorporated so much of the jazz into his playing, and he played all of that, and everything that he did was such a groove that came from that R&B basic bass. But he was an innovator, and when I was studying with him, I realized that I was in the presence of an innovator, and that's a heavy thing. You don't get that experience very often, because he was doing things no one was doing in the world. And so it was very, very, I was lucky to be in his presence.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, you both say you both teach to students. So I've got a question for you, actually, on that. Do you think it's possible to be an innovator today?
Yeah. Absolutely, yes. Danny, do you want to elaborate?
Just thinking for some of the students, I mean, teaching is such a strange thing. I was never going to teach. I'm a student. That's how I look at myself. In 30 years, I never did teach one lesson. I took lessons, but this teaching job fell in my lap at a college in Florida, and I've been doing it, and it's been fascinating to see how the younger musicians take to it and where they go. Innovating could be in a traditional way, or it could be in kind of like a Jacob Collier modern, using technology in a different way than I would have ever done. But it's interesting to see, it comes down to study and how much time you put in, and if you use your natural talent to the best of your ability. I look at myself, I don't know if Mark looks at himself the same way. I look at myself like a coach. You could do it that way, but here's 10 other versions of how people do this, and see what works for you. And then on top of it, I've had some incredible teachers in my life, and I can translate their teachings to the students, and they can do with it as they want. It's a tough world to make a career in, and also because there's so much media saturation and things available, and not as many gigs, and of course with the pandemic, it's a whole other world with that. But in terms of actually playing the instrument, I see some of these kids coming up with things in ways that I'll never do it, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, so you can't hold back creativity. It's going to flourish and develop, and if the will is really strong to bring it forth, it will get out there.
Okay.
And those are people that you're really hearing now that are doing it.
Well, I know in this country, we've got an incredible amount of young talented musicians coming out of Britain, probably more now than in the last 30 years. I don't know why, maybe there's a lot of music schools or something like that, but there is a lot of talent. But of course, because of the nature of the music, they don't really always get heard beyond a certain audience. So that is something a bit difficult about the jazz world. Yes, there are less places to play like there were 30 or 40 years ago, most definitely. Okay, so that's great. Now, what I want to ask you next, let's just finish up with two things. So the first thing is, we're in unique times. How difficult or different is it releasing a new CD during a pandemic? There's not pandemics every day of the week or every year, Exactly. This is Mark, and this is released on my label, Wave Tone Records. We have 25 releases on that label.
it's at my website, markegan.com. People can go see what those records are. But we originally were going to release this in March, right when the pandemic hit. And I just said, stop, we got to wait because who's going to be doing radio or everything was so uncertain at that point.
Yeah.
So as it went on, I said, you know what? This is now, after everyone's sort of getting used to this, even though you can never get used to this, but in another way, I thought, the people are home now, they're on social media, let's put it out now, because why not?
Yeah.
Everybody's our captive audience, there's nothing else to do, So we decided to put it out now, which is September 1st. Actually, the official release date was September 1st. So that was the thinking of it, and that was social media, like speaking with you, Lori, and all our friends on Facebook and just all the different social media areas. You can really spread the word more so than It gets more and more all the time that the social media can expand the listening range of and the promotion of a new record. So we thought it was a good time.
Yeah,
I think it.
Danny, it's kind of hopeful. That's what I feel. Because you can get really down in the dumps about what's going on, or you can just keep moving forward. And luckily, Mark was able to put this out on his label, and and the music that we've done even years ago, which is still available, people are discovering and finding some of the old Elements releases, and like the ones you mentioned, are finding that they still enjoy the music regardless of when it was recorded or released. I'm just proud, and this is a start of. We've done a lot of duo recordings, so this is a chance to get the first one out, but hopefully we'll get to continue more of it and just keep moving forward.
Okay, that's great. And the final question is, well, it's not really a question this time, because usually I would always ask, what plans have you got for touring? But
well, that's another thing. We were going to do a duo tour for this, and it was going to be sometime in the early mid-spring. So that's on hold, obviously, at the moment. But we do plan on doing some duo concerts, and we've done them before, and it's very exciting, and it's a real wide open spectrum of things. So we will do some, right, Danny?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a duo, when we can perform, and it's a very interesting thing. We can play for large audiences, but we can also play for small audiences, and we'll just have to see how it evolves. But it's fun, and it's just the two of us, so we can do it in a very safe way. And again, it's a chance to explore. It changes all the time, and it's something that we can continue to grow with for a long time. I just saw I got a crazy email yesterday from on the Jacob Collier fan page. Jacob Collier is great, technical genius. He's planning his tour. He sent out a thing saying, I'm going to tour these, 50 cities. So reserve your tickets now, and then when the pandemic is over, then I'll book the actual tour, and I'll base it around how many people have responded in what city, so I can pick the size of the venue. It was creative, and it was bizarre to me to see that. But people are coming up in all kinds of different ways. So we'll see where it goes.
yeah, no, that's great. It reminds me of what Jack Dijonette said once about the young musicians. They have to be entrepreneurs now. Yeah. I saw him do a talk at the South Bank some years ago, and that's exactly what he said. Like, that stayed with me because it's very true.
Yes. He's, a big influence for both Mark and I. And in fact, I don't want to say it's directly from that, but what was it that Jack put out the duo album with Keith years ago, right? That Ruta and Daida. Yes. So, we were talking about releasing duos. That was one thing that comes to mind. There have been, heavyweight jazz musicians that have put out duo recordings.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of. I have another one with Shelly Man and I forget the piano player. It was just piano and drums. But I don't know many just bass and drums that have come out.
What about Richard Davis and Elvin? Isn't that a duo?
Well, I know one was with Joe
Farrell?
With Joe Farrell, it was trio.
Okay, that's a
duo. Did Jack and Dave Holland ever do a duo?
I'm not sure.
No, but it's true what you say, actually. I'm sure that Jack has done a duo with John Sermon, for instance.
Oh.
I think he has. But you're right. I don't recall too many bass and drums. But again, like I say, because the way how you guys approach it, it makes it possible. So that's the thing. Well, this has been a really nice interview, and I thank you guys for joining us on Jazz on the Radio today. And hopefully everything goes well, and the record goes well, and hopefully you guys will be touring soon, maybe next year. We'll see. Hopefully.
That would be great.
Yes, Laurie, thank you very much. Thank you all the listeners for all the support for so many years.
Yes, Laurie, and thanks for all the listeners.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
The JLR interview series.